Good morning, everyone. This is Shannon from USA Test Prep, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar today, USA Test Prep in the Indiana classroom. So this webinar is geared specifically to Indiana teachers, and we're going to go through some different topics here, and I am recording the session so that you will receive an email with the link to the recording a little bit later on this afternoon. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in here so we don't waste any time. So first, a few quick stats about your state. There are 116 high schools that use USA Test Prep in Indiana, 19 middle schools, and only 5 elementary. So definitely more high schools than middle or elementary. But we do offer subscriptions for all 3 levels. And in Indiana specifically, we have an annual user meeting. We pick a handful of states across the country every year to send one of our USA Test Prep representatives, and we have a half-day training. Usually there's a lunch and you get a professional development certificate afterwards. So if that's something you'd be interested in, just keep an eye out for emails that are sent in the fall about that user meeting. Usually it's held in the month of October, and the location in the state can vary. Last year it was Indianapolis, but it could be different for this next year, or it might be the same. As far as content goes, we have a devoted content team that stays up to date with what's going on with your state, and if there's changes coming down the pipeline, they try and keep up with all of that that's happening. So if and when your standards do change, that's something that you'll get as part of your subscription if you have a standard update. So for science, we know that this is an upcoming year where you'll have some new science standards. And in the case on USA Test Prep where we have both the old and the new versions available for a subject area, it can be a little tricky because you have 2 separate checkboxes to check for your class. And so if I zoom in here, you'll see that I have chemistry and then chemistry new as an example. So if a teacher has their class associated with chemistry, but not chemistry new, and there are other teachers in the building creating benchmarks and sharing them for chemistry new, the teacher wouldn't see that if they didn't have chemistry new checked. They would have to have that checked, not just the old chemistry. So sometimes that can create problems where one is checked but not the other, and teachers are making resources and benchmarks for the one that the teacher doesn't have checked. So in your classes tab, in that class management area, just make sure that you have both checked so that you don't miss out on anything. And again, for Indiana specifically, we know that the iLearn is coming, but the standards haven't changed. So as far as USA Test Prep goes, aside from science, you're not going to really see an update. It's just that the assessment itself is changing for your state. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into one of the great features about USA Test Prep is you can create a custom assessment through our benchmarking tool. And so we're going to take a look at a few different ways that you can do this. It's on your benchmarks tab. There's a link to create new benchmark. And if you pick basic mode in step 2, all you have to do is decide how long you'd like that benchmark to be, either small, medium, large, or actual test length. And it will show you in the top right corner how many questions would be included. And in basic mode, USA Test Prep will pick all the questions. You'll still have a chance to look at them and even switch them out if you don't like them. But you don't have to go through and actually pick out all the questions yourself. And all standards are going to be represented in a basic level benchmark. And there's a little link. It says actual test percentages when you're in basic mode. If you click that, it's going to show you the breakdown of standards that the benchmark will cover. So if there's a particular standard that's weighted more heavily, then you'll see more questions picked for that standard. So that's basic, but you also have custom. If you'd rather pick the specific standards yourself or pick out the questions yourself, custom mode will allow you to do that. So it basically opens up our database to you so that you can go in and see all the questions and you can search for them. There's a little search feature here where you can sort the questions by DOK level. So if you're looking for, level 2s or 3s or however you want to sort it, you can find them quickly. You can sort by difficulty level, which ones are the most newly added in our system, all through that little drop down. And a few tips. If you click on the question, you can actually preview it instead of just seeing the question stem. You can also hover over the statistics icon to quickly see the DOK level and the difficulty. And then you can also use this feedback button over on the right to give us instant feedback about a question if you feel like it belongs with a different standard or it needs to be tweaked in this way. Just let us know, and that goes directly to our content team and they'll take care of it and make those changes. Also on a benchmark, you can add questions of your own, which is a really popular feature for a lot of teachers. When you're in step 3 called favorites, you'll have the option to author your own question, and we have both multiple choice and free response formats available. And when you author your own question on USATestprep, it's only for your own use. So it does not get shared with everyone else on USATestprep. That's not how it works. It's just for your own account. But if you're sharing a benchmark, then obviously other teachers at your school will see that question, but you're the only one who has ownership over it. And so that's, again, the authoring your own question on a benchmark. You can decide between multiple choice and free response. And speaking of sharing benchmarks, which I just mentioned, benchmarks are the best kind of assessment on our site to be shared among your department. And there's 2 ways that you can share a benchmark. First, when you are creating a benchmark, there's an option where it says teacher to either select your name or shared benchmark. And if you check shared benchmark, then any other teachers in your department at your school will be able to see this benchmark and assign it to their students. Another way is that if you've already created a benchmark, you can go to your benchmarks tab, click on the little settings gear icon, change the shared to yes, and then save at the bottom. All right, so benchmarks, again, is a great way that you can build an assessment however you want. And next, we're going to talk about our assignment system, because once you've given a benchmark, maybe you also want to reinforce what you're teaching in class for that week or the month and create an assignment, or maybe based on the areas of weakness through the benchmark, you want to create an assignment. But the assignments tab is a great place to create a bunch of different activities for students. So not just a benchmark assessment, but you could assign practice questions where students have to go through those questions one at a time and they get instant feedback. There's vocabulary terms, performance tasks, instructional videos, crossword puzzles, and games as part of a group assignment. And if you're new to the assignment system, you can assign either a single or a group assignment. A single assignment is exactly what it sounds like. It's one activity, and there's a couple things that you can do with a single assignment that you can't with a group. One is that you can select the difficulty of multiple choice questions. So we have beginner, random, and advanced, and you have those settings in a single assignment. But if you are assigning a group assignment and you want to assign practice questions, the only option is random. You're not going to have the beginner or advanced to choose from. And the other thing you can do with a single assignment is that you can assign questions as short answer versus a group assignment, it's strictly multiple choice. But the group assignment is really valuable because it will save you time if you want to assign a bunch of different activities, and you can even set a specific order that you want students to work in. And so here's, again, where you would decide initially when you are creating an assignment whether you want that to be a single or a group. And a couple tips about the assignment system. questions that we get. If you are selecting your start and your end dates, just be mindful that if you select a start date in the future, students can't see it until that date. So if you were to log in as a student, it's not going to be visible anywhere. And then students can complete an assignment up to 2 months after the due date. But if you want to lock it down before that 2 months, if you don't want students to work on it that late, we do have a little lock icon that you can lock the assignment, and then students will not be able to work on it. And something else that I'm going to show is that if you click on the name of the assignment, you can see what settings you selected. And so here's a screenshot. Here is the assignment name, and if you click on it, it's going to open up all this information for you. And so here are the settings, because a lot of times we have teachers who are unsure, what settings they pick. They can't remember, because you're dealing with so many things at one time. And so if you click on it, it'll show you a reminder. And then you also have the little lock icon over here on the right side of your tab. So again, that's the assignment system if you just want to assign a variety of different activities beyond, an actual benchmark assessment. The other big thing are different item types. And so we have obviously your traditional multiple choice questions. We also have constructed response, which are the free response questions on our site, and those can be assigned separately as an actual assignment, or you can incorporate them into a benchmark. And then we also have technology enhanced items, which we call those performance tasks, but you can again assign them separately or include them in a benchmark. And we have several different types, ranging from matching, classifying, one called choose, where students have to pick all the different answers that are true or that answer the question. And we do have some future items currently in development. The big one is evidence-based selected response, kind of like where you have a two-part question all centered around the same passage or topic there. And our goal is to have those by the beginning of the upcoming school year. And we're also going to be adding additional performance task types. So our content team is definitely busy trying to build those items. And if there's anything specific that USATestprep doesn't offer that Indiana, is really pushing that we don't have yet, let us know. There's a feedback and contact button at the bottom of every page where you can let us know. And again, our content team does their best to stay on top of what's going on. But if you just want to make sure that we're aware that we're working on something, just send in some feedback to get in touch with us. All right, the next topic we're going to jump into are benchmark results, because this is a really powerful tool where you can track by indicator how your students are doing. And specifically with a benchmark, you're going to have really detailed results where you can see the scores by standard and by indicator. So we'll go through what this looks like. Here is the benchmark result page. You have your overall average, and then you also have your scores by standard over here on the right. And you can further break that down at the indicator level so you can really see as a class where your class is doing well and where they need that extra practice. We also have a student.rank tab when you're looking at your benchmark results, where this will show all the different students and each student's performance by indicator. And there are two buttons at the bottom of this, assign individual weakness and assign average weakness. And these are kind of like the magic buttons on USATestprep, where you can very quickly create assignments for students based in their areas of weakness. And so the individual weakness one will assign practice to students in their individual 3 lowest scoring indicators, and the average weakness will assign the overall class's 3 lowest scoring indicators to everybody. And you can use one or both of those buttons. It's best if you can wait until all of your students are done taking a benchmark, and that way you can just assign it to everyone in one swoop. If you assign it to a few students and then come back, a few days later to assign it to more students, it's actually going to assign it to everybody, even the students who've already received it. That's why it's best if you can wait until everyone's done. And then we also have an item analysis tab where you can see question by question what percentage of your students got it right. And we have different ways that this can be sorted. So you have your questions on your item analysis tab, and you can click on standard, indicator, or DOK, or percent correct to have that page refresh, and it will organize the questions according to how you want. So right now I have it sorted by indicator, so I can see that here's this indicator, here is the average, and here are the questions that go along with that indicator. Now, if you're looking at, if you want to see all your DOK level 1 questions together and your DOK level 2 and 3 questions together, then you could click on DOK. You could also click on percent correct and have your most frequently missed questions at the very top. So lots of different ways that you can view those questions. And then by actually clicking on the view link, you'll see a breakdown for how every answer choice was selected, which will give you some valuable insight into what kinds of mistakes students are making for these questions. All right, and then the final topic before we go onto the live site for a very quick demo are some daily classroom resources that you have for every subject area. If you go to the very top of your page, there's resources there. We have a bell ringer that you could incorporate as a quick warm-up question. You could watch a video. And so these are great if you need something to supplement your lesson plan that day. Maybe you don't want to get to the computer lab, but you still would like to have students practice with the questions. These are all kind of teacher-led activities that you can put up on your board. And it's a really, again, good way to practice with the questions and the standards. And then also we have test information. So if I go back to this page, there's a little test information icon over on the right-hand side of whatever subject area page you're on. And that will show you some information such as the breakdown of standards and their weights, as well as item counts for your specific subject. And so we show those item counts here, how many questions, technology enhanced items, videos, and vocabulary terms. And we are always adding to that. So you'll see those numbers, change throughout the school year. All right, so that's the end of the presentation. Again, I am recording this, so you will get a copy of it later on, because I know I went through a lot of information pretty quickly, but you'll get a copy of the presentation itself as well. But let me go ahead and go over to the live site now. Pull that over here. Okay, so here I'm logged in as an Indiana high school teacher, but I could switch over to middle or elementary and everything looks exactly the same. And I just wanted to point out a couple of the key things that I talked about in the presentation. One being our benchmark system. This is really the best way to create a custom assessment. And again, we have the 2 modes that I talked about. Let me just go ahead and get this set up here and choose my subject area. So again, we talked about the basic and custom. So the basic, it's going to pick the questions for you and save you some time. It will cover questions from all the different standards though. But again, it's going to pull the questions according to the weights of the different standards. So if there's a standard that's weighted more heavily, you're going to see more questions pulled from that one. Versus custom is where you get a chance to go in, pick out your standards, pick out your indicator, and then you can see the questions that you have to choose from. And again, just click on the question to actually see it in full with the answer choices. And you can scroll through the questions this way, which makes it a little bit easier to tell if you like the question or not. And there is a checkbox in the top left corner to add it to your benchmark. And then over here on the right, you can see how many questions total are in that standard. So in this case, I have 69 questions and I'm on question 5. So that will give you a sense of how many, you're going to have to scroll through until you reach the end. And again, you can sort the questions according to difficulty level or DOK, or if you're looking for short answer questions, you can sort all of them that way. And as far as the DOK level goes, you don't have to, it's not going to filter any questions out. So if I click low DOK, it just reorganizes them. So I'm starting with the 1s and eventually, I'll reach the 2s and then the 3s. But if you instantly want to find your 3s, then you'd want to switch it to high DOK and see if there's any 3s. In this case, I'm starting off with 2s. And to quickly explain our difficulty and how it differs from the DOK, for difficulty on our site, we go by the % correct. So that is the actual percentage of students who've answered this question correctly on USATestprep. And so in this case, it's 68%, which would be the easiest question for this indicator. And if I switch it to high difficulty, now it's dropped down to 14%. So definitely a big range as far as how often that question is answered correctly. And if there's ever a question that you feel is just too difficult, maybe the % correct is under 10%, and that could be a red flag that there's something wrong with the question, that would be a good reason to send us a feedback. And again, there's lots of different reasons you can send in a feedback to our content team about that specific question, and then we can make those changes needed. The other thing I wanted to show back in the benchmarks tab is a result page because I talked about the item analysis. So I want to show that before our time is up here. So here's the result page. Again, you have your scores by standard and by indicator. And then you have the different tabs down here with the dot rank where you can see your students' proficiency by this color-coded chart. And then you have the item analysis where you have the actual questions themselves. And again, you can sort by any of these different blue links. So if I click DOK, it's going to refresh the page. And so now I have my DOK level 1 questions, my level 2, and if there's any level 3 down here at the bottom. And so you can see the overall average, however you're grouping them. So if you group them by standard, you'll see your standard average. I see the DOK level 3 average and all the questions that go along with that. So that, again, lots of different ways that you can sort the information. And you can also click view, which will give you a breakdown for how each answer choice was selected. So that way, if there is a very common answer choice that is being selected, then you'll be able to see that pretty quickly. And this is only available with the benchmark because all the questions are the same. And so all this data can be pulled very easily for that. So that is the end of the webinar because I know we're about 23 minutes in and I wanted to make sure we have time for any questions that anybody has. But before anyone logs out, there is a survey. When you exit, it's just one question to get general feedback about either this webinar or webinars in the future that you'd be interested in. We're trying to offer more webinar sessions to better, educate teachers on how to use the site and all the different features. So some are kind of large group webinars for everybody. And then we're also experimenting with the specific state webinars or even a certain content area. So any kind of feedback about that would be appreciated. So again, that concludes the webinar for this afternoon, but I am going to stick around in case there are any questions. And I'm also going to put my email in the chat box so that you have it as a reference. But you'll also get an email from me later on today with a link to the recording. So if there's any questions, feel free to type those in the chat box and I'll begin to look through those now.